So, as you will no doubt be aware, I frequently comment on human nature. And one of the characteristics of this nature is to catastrophize a bad situation. And part of the problem is, if we give in to catastrophic thinking, not only do we make the situation worse, but also we sabotage our ability to improve things in the future. Setting aside any metaphysical considerations, what is clear to us is that everything is impermanent. However bad the situation, eventually this will come to pass. And furthermore, if we accept the Buddhist position, then along with that comes a belief that mundane existence is essentially cyclical and therefore also meaningless. The Buddha taught that there are perpetual cycles of pestilence, famine, and war. And furthermore, that which perpetuates this cycle of suffering is nothing other than our clinging and identification. This is what we call fundamental ignorance. It is ignorance about the true nature of phenomena, a denial of impermanence, and the fact that everything essentially is empty in nature. So as you can see here, giving in to catastrophic thinking will only perpetuate our suffering and not do anything to make things better, to alleviate that. In fact, it is clinging that has got us into trouble in the first place. Clinging to identity, nationhood, purity of race, and civilization. The fact of the matter is, none of these things are fixed or real in any way. These are mere conventionalities, ephemeral, and in constant flux. Now, I can't imagine what possible evolutionary advantage there could be in this sort of catastrophic thinking, but I suspect that it has something to do with the lemming effect. That when things get truly bad, there is some overall advantage if the weakest amongst us simply give up and perish, and the strongest survivors are left behind. Although a particular situation may seem intolerable, it can't last forever. But likewise, it can also get much worse before it gets better. We only have to look at the situation in Nazi Germany and World War II to understand how very bad things can get before people get fed up with their narratives. But there's no need to give in to despair. For example, many people find the current geopolitical situation to be absolutely intolerable and are dismayed when they see how very bad things have gotten in the United States of America. But here's the thing. President Trump is the oldest person ever to be elected to become President of the United States of America. I mean, he is already showing very obvious signs of cognitive and physical decline. And so it's not like he's going to be the president forever, in perpetuity. But the way people talk, you would think as if they believed he would be president forever. And likewise, many have great anxiety over the thought of J.D. Vance becoming president in his place. But this is highly unlikely, because J.D. Vance is extremely unpopular, even within his own party. And even if Trump dies, and then the vice president, J.D. Vance, becomes the new president of the United States of America, eventually this situation also will fail, because everything is impermanent. And not only that, the generation that fueled the insanity of this current movement, the baby boomers, is itself at the very end of its term. Their time has come, and they will soon pass on, along with Fox News, linear cable television, and the entire MAGA movement. But I only use this as an example because it is topical. In fact, currently, I am in my home province of Alberta, and many people have similar misgivings about the future of this beautiful province. And so likewise, I could use that as an example for this video, or the decline of Western civilization in general that has become so obvious for all to see. To be honest, eventually, not only will the human race itself cease to exist, but even the sun and stars in the sky will cease to shine. But because of human nature, we often make things worse before they get better. You only have to take World War II as an example. But sadly, it's often the case that it's only once we see how very bad things can get that we then turn against it. We turn against war. After World War II, then a new calculus entered into global geopolitics. Famously, President Kennedy promoted the notion of soft power in the world. And if we just look at the statistics, we can see that this policy has led to the betterment of not only the citizens of the United States of America, but of all the peoples in the world. Of course, it's not until we realize our folly that we will return to common sense. However, in the meantime, we're going to have to learn to tolerate quite a lot of pain in our misguided pursuit of self-interest and self-importance. But what's the conclusion that the Buddha came to? I mean, he taught that things are cyclical, that these things move in cycles. We go from periods of conducting ourselves in a relatively virtuous manner and eventually end up in conflict that arises from our own negative way of thinking. What you have to understand is, in the Mahayana, principally how we can determine whether or not something is virtuous is whether or not our motivations are based on self-clinging. As I said before, altruism is the very foundation of the spiritual path. And self-concern is the way we get ourselves into trouble. When I was very young, I made the decision not to get caught into this trap of materialism. Of course, I was quite naive in believing that I could live outside the mundane world. The truth is, you can't escape the material world until you have achieved awakening. So in the meantime, provisionally, you have to learn to work within the bounds of ordinary, conventional understanding. This is what we call the provisional truth. So basically, unless you're someone like Milarepa, there's no way to escape getting caught up in the material world. But likewise, you don't have to buy into the narrative that everyone else is selling you. This is the thing that perplexed me most when I was young and caused me to leave my own home country and seek a new way of living in a new land. You have a choice, either to buy into the narrative that everyone is selling you in the world, or to forge your own provisional yet more positive narrative. A narrative based on the benefit of others. The problem is, samsara never stops until you just drop it. But we have extreme difficulty in dropping our worldly narrative. The first step is to realize that things just aren't okay the way they are. And don't fool yourself by becoming a non-dual zombie and telling yourself that everything is just fine the way it is, because obviously for us, there's things that we cannot tolerate. Especially if you've got some empathy for others and see how they suffer, then naturally you'll give rise to this wish that they can find happiness and be free from suffering. Non-duality is something that comes much later and is synonymous with awakening itself. At the moment, we are what we call ordinary human beings. And so we can't pretend that we're noble or enlightened beings. If I could give you just one piece of advice, that would be, don't get distracted. Don't get distracted by the mundane world. Now, currently, it's the Christmas season. And really, Christmas should be about love, compassion, tolerance, and altruism. Unfortunately, for us here in the West, it has primarily become about materialism. Even though we're aware of this, then we find it very hard to counteract our natural materialistic ideals. Because essentially we believe happiness comes from comfort. But this is a big mistake on the spiritual path. Happiness comes from removing our clinging, our identification, especially to the notion of me and mine. Based on this ignorance, this belief in a self, then we look for that which will bring material happiness to that self. And so it's very difficult to get out of this trap. When I was naive and young, I pointed the finger outwards and blamed corporations and governments. But really, these governments would have no power unless we ourselves were subject to our own self-clinging, our greed, our selfishness. What Jesus and Buddha taught us equally is that we have to have love for others. And we have to think about the greater good. Live a simple and humble life, like the saints of the past. And so my hope is that at this time, when we're approaching the end of the year, and when we're remembering love and compassion, inspired by the story of Christmas, that we will make plans and be able to set our motivation for 2026, the new year, to lose some of our selfishness and apply ourselves more vigorously to the benefit of others. Currently, I'm in Alberta. I brought my father here to see the family for the Christmas celebrations. And after this, I'm traveling to Europe for a couple of months. One of the main reasons why I'm doing this is because, as you may have heard, I've been writing a book. But because of my responsibilities, especially in developing the infrastructure at the Hermitage for future retreats, then it seems I never get the time to dedicate myself to my writing, and likewise to my translation. Although, temporarily, in the meantime, my activities may have some limited benefit, to my mind, what will be of greater benefit in the future, once I pass on from this world, will be what I am able to leave behind, in terms of my ideas through my writing, and also in terms of what I can translate into my native language from the scriptures that exist in the Tibetan canon. As you know, I spent 12 years in retreat, practicing and studying. And the way I see it is, if I can use whatever I learned at that time to help others connect with this very special message that teaches about the empty nature of reality and the importance of altruism on the path, then when I pass from this world, that will be more beneficial than, for example, doing short one-week retreats here and there. Likewise, my hope is that if I can develop a hermitage here in Canada, that also, when I pass from this world, that may be something that can persist in perpetuity. But this won't be based on my activities alone. In fact, the greatest share of the burden will be upon those who come to the Hermitage and practice. Because if through their meditation they gain some spiritual insight, then in the same manner, in the future, they will be able to benefit others. Because it's only from realizing spiritual knowledge that we're able to guide those through mundane existence to final awakening. It is by this method that the Buddha benefited his students. It wasn't through his miraculous powers, as it is taught. Realization is not something that can be passed from one mind to another. As I said in previous videos, it's not through blessing that we will achieve emancipation or awakening. Rather, it is through applying ourselves in an authentic manner in our own practice that we ourselves may come to see the truth. And the inception of this, that which perpetuates our progress on the path, comes at first from ideas and intention. Of the Noble Eightfold Path, the very first step is right view. And how we impart right view to others is through our teaching. It's through passing on ideas, provisionally through the use of things like logic and analogy and metaphor. But eventually, this is something that needs to come to be realized by the practitioner themselves. And the way this is done is through their own investigation, their investigation of the direct perception of reality. And the teacher is the one who is able to steer that individual away from their misconception. Because someone who has practiced and studied the path, has gained experience or realization, then is well aware of the pitfalls that are waiting for us as we progress on our journey. And it's my wish that you yourself should eventually gain this type of spiritual knowledge, experience and realization of the path, realization of what is called primordial wisdom. And in this way, eventually become a fully enlightened being, one who is able to benefit others in a limitless way through their own development of bodhicitta, what we call loving kindness and compassion. But don't let me rain on your Christmas parade. Enjoy the time with your family and friends. But remember, the inner meaning of Christmas is love and compassion. And as we know, then the Lord Buddha and Jesus Christ had limitless love for all beings suffering in the 6 realms of samsara. So my message here to you today is, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and good luck with your practice. Until next time, see you later.